Hi, this is Corella again. I'm here again talking about how to write a good and an effective academic college level 5-paragraph essay. And if you remember, here's my metaphor once again about how do you write a good, effective college level essay, 5-paragraph essay. And I use this stool. By the way, this is supposed to be a stool. It probably doesn't look like it, but it's supposed to be a stool. You know, how do you do that? And if you remember, the stool has 4 legs. We've already talked about structure, and I told you how to structure a good sentence, a good essay, looking at the thesis statement and support. And then the next thing we were on is grammar, and we're going to continue with grammar, okay? So we're talking about the second leg of how to write an effective, a good, academic level essay. So let's continue with grammar. If you remember on grammar, I was talking about verbs. I haven't even gotten to verb tenses. I was talking about verb forms. And I talked about the 2 verb forms. I talked about the infinitive. And I also talked about the simple form. And the infinitive, let's use a verb that's regular. Because I talked about regular versus irregular. A regular verb would be the verb to talk. Right? And the simple form is the verb talk without the to. Okay. Now that we understand about the infinitive and about the simple form, now let's look at 2 other forms of the verb. Now here it's very important if the verb is regular or irregular. So first I'll start with the regular verb, and then I'll show you why it's so important that you know if a verb is regular or not regular. Once again, I'll start with the verb to talk. So I'm having a verb here, and the verb that I'm talking about is the verb to talk. Now I'm going to be talking about the past form. I'm not talking about the past tense, because that's a particular time. But I'm talking about the form of the verb that you use when you're talking in the past tense for a regular verb. So I'm talking about the past form. Because you can use the verb in the past tense form or the past form for things other than the past. Okay? You might not be aware of that. But if I said to you, I wish... if I spoke Spanish, I would be able to translate. So I say, if I spoke Spanish, I would be able to translate. Now I'm using the past tense, or if I talked to Mary, I would, X, Y, and Z, whatever, right? But both of those, I spoke and talked. I'm not talking about the past. Or if I had $1 million, but $1 million in New York can't even buy a house, so what would $1 million do? So I have to say, if I had $1 billion, right? I'm using the past tense form, but that's not the past tense. I've never had $1 billion. I never spoke Spanish. I never talked to Mary. So that's why I say the past form or past tense form, but I'm not talking about the past tense. And then you have another one that's called the past participle. That's another form of the verb. Now, if we're talking about regular verbs, this and this looks alike. Okay? This and this looks alike. You use the past form for right now. I'm only going to be talking about the past tense of how you use the past form. There are other grammatical structures in which you use the past form. It's a little bit more complex. So I'm just going to be talking about the past tense. Now the past form is this. So you have the verb to talk. And it's I, you, we, they, he, she, and it. Just get rid of that to, bring down the talk, so bring down what's called the simple form, but it's not going to stay like this, and then add an ED. So I, you, we, they, he, she, it talked. Not talked. You don't add an extra syllable unless the verb ends in a T or a D. Right? So it's I, you, we, they, he, she, it talked. That ED becomes part of that word. It doesn't become a separate syllable. Now, here's the problem. I'm going to show you the past participle. Once again, the past participle is not the past. The past participle is a form of the verb. You can use the past participle in many different verb tenses, but let me just show you. So once again, you have the verb to talk. But with the past participle, unlike the past form, you cannot use it alone. So I'm going to use it with the verb, in this instance, the verb have or has. For example, I have talked to my mother many times. She has talked to her mother many times. I cannot use the past participle by itself. But I know it gets confusing because watch what I show you what the past participle is. You get rid of the to, you bring down the talk, and you add the ED. So you're saying, well, it looks like this. Number one, it cannot be used by itself. So this is I, let me do it over here. Yeah, let me do this. I, you, we, they have talked, he, she, it has talked. Now, I know this and this looks alike, but it's not. Number one, if you speak Spanish, because this way in Spanish I could show you very easily. If you speak Spanish, this is hablé, hablaste, habló, hablamos, hablaron. Where in Spanish, this is he hablado, the hado, hablado. Has hablado, hemos hablado, han hablado, ha hablado. Right? For él, ella, y la cosa. Well, in Spanish would be por usted. No? So you can see that even though in Spanish this doesn't look the same, because this is the hablé, hablaste, hablamos, hablaron. Okay? Where you can see it much more clearly, is when I do an irregular verb. There it's very clear that even though with regular verbs these look the same, with an irregular verb they don't. So let me just show you with a regular verb. Okay, so let's do this. Let me think about regular verb in which, let me see here. Okay, I got one. I have one. Okay. Well, let me just keep the have here. For example, if you have the verb to eat, an irregular verb, I'm sorry, the irregular verb to eat, or you have the irregular verb to take, or the irregular verb to do. These are all irregular verbs. Now you're going to see clearly that the past form and the past participle form are very different from each other. For example, the past tense of the verb to eat is ate. So I, you, we, they, he, she, it ate their dinner. The past participle form is not ate. The past participle form is eaten. So this, for our Spanish speakers, and they can understand this very clearly in their own language, this is comí, comiste, comió, comieron, no, comimos, comieron. And this is he comido, has comido, hemos comido, the ido, the hado. Okay. The past tense for the verb to take is took. I, you, we, they, he, she, it took her lunch earlier, or took the car, or whatever. But the past participle form is I, you, we, they have taken. He, she, it has taken. You can see that the past tense form and the past participle form are very different from each other. One more. To do. I, you, we, they, he, she, it did their homework, his homework, our homework. But the past participle form is I, you, we, they have done. He, she, it has done. Right? This is hecho in Espanol. This is tomado in Espanol. Depende. This all depends on what you're saying, because the verb tomar in Spanish means a lot of different things. But just the form itself. So this would be comido, tomado, and this is hecho. Okay. In Espanol, this would be, well, depending on the person, but let me just give you the first person singular. Comido, tomé, y, well, let me see. Well, I just forgot it. Oh, my. The verb I said, hice. Boom, like that. It just left me, but I got it. Brain freeze. All right. So you can see that the past form and the past participle form with regular verbs, the rule is if the verb is regular, right, and it ends in a regular verb, for the past tense form ends in ed, then that same form is used for the past participle. But it doesn't mean the same thing. And how do you know? Well, first of all, because you have the verb have and has in English. But if the verb is irregular, it's very clear. Ate, eaten. Took, taken. Did, done. Okay, so that's the past tense form and the past participle form in English. So the next thing we'll be talking about, let me see, we'll be talking about, we'll continue talking about verbs. Because verbs are very, I think very interesting, but extremely important. Sometimes I'll be translating into Spanish just for, number one, for the Spanish speakers, and if you are a Spanish speaker, because sometimes what's clear in Spanish, if you do it, in English is not clear. Like the difference between the past form and the past participle form. So once again, this is Coralla at welcome.com. Have a good day. Thank you very much.